All right, today we're jumping into the wild, evolving world of crypto theft. And what's crazy is how it's changing on two totally different fronts. You've got these massive state sponsored heists becoming scarily good, but at the same time, the threat is trickling down and starting to target everyday folks. You know, people like you and me.
Let's kick things off with a number, a really, really big number. 2.02 billion, with a B, dollars. Now, what if I told you that's how much crypto one single group has stolen just this year?
Yeah, and this quote from a new Chainalysis report really breaks it down. We're talking about North Korean hackers. They're the ones behind that massive figure. And get this, it's a 51% jump from the year before. But here's the part that really gets me. They did it with fewer attacks. Think about that. Fewer attacks, but way more money. That tells you one thing, they're getting dangerously good at this.
So the big question is how? How are they getting so much better, so much more efficient? Well, it all boils down to a really smart, really cunning shift in their whole game plan.
And this really lays it out perfectly. The old playbook, right? That was the long con. They'd actually place their own IT people inside crypto companies, using fake IDs to get hired and spy from the inside. But the new playbook? Oh, it's way more direct. Now they're not trying to get in. They're tricking the people who are already in to just open the door for them. So this new deception strategy, it really comes down to two main plays, two different social engineering schemes, and each one is custom built to exploit human trust, just in a slightly different way. Okay, so the first one is what they call the fake recruiter scheme. Picture this. Hackers pretend to be recruiters from some huge, well-known tech or Web3 firm. They find talented engineers and dangle these really attractive job offers in front of them. They take them through this whole fake hiring process. It all looks totally legit. And then comes the final step, the technical interview. That's when they ask the developer, hey, can you just download and run this tool for us? And boom, that tool is malware. It compromises their system, and just like that, the hackers have a backdoor into the engineer's actual company.
All right, the second play is a bit different. This one goes right for the top, the executives. The hackers pose as potential investors. They'll spend weeks, even months, having these long conversations, pretending to do their due diligence. And all the while, they're asking these super specific, detailed questions about internal systems, security, you name it. See, with this one, they're not even trying to install malware. They're playing the long game, patiently mapping out the entire company's infrastructure to find the absolute perfect weak spot for their attack.
Okay, so they've pulled off the heist. They have the funds. Now comes the next big problem. How do you make billions in stolen crypto just disappear? Well, that's where a super complex laundering process kicks in. And you can see here, it's not a simple process. They send this money on a wild ride to cover their tracks. They'll use DeFi protocols and mixing services to basically scramble the history, making it impossible to follow. They use cross-chain bridges to jump from one blockchain to another, and they'll use exchanges that don't ask too many questions about who you are. The whole goal is just to muddy the waters so much that by the time the money comes out the other end, nobody can trace it back to the original theft. But look, these huge state-sponsored hacks, they get all the headlines, right? But that's only half the story. There's this other trend happening at the same time, and it's one that might hit a little closer to home for a lot of us. The threat isn't just for the big corporations anymore. It's shifting focus right down to individual wallets. And just look at these numbers. The increase is, well, it's staggering. The number of hacks targeting personal wallets has almost tripled in just a couple of years. We're going from around 54,000 incidents back in 2022 to more than 158,000 this year. That's a huge jump. And the number of actual victims has doubled too. So where are these attacks happening? Well, the data shows us the hotspots. If you're a user on a big, busy blockchain like Ethereum or Tron, you're currently at a much higher risk of being targeted. What's interesting, though, is that other big platforms like Base and Solana have a surprisingly low number of attacks on their users. For now, anyway. Okay, so this is where things get a little weird, a little counterintuitive. We just saw that the number of attacks on individuals has tripled, right? So you'd think the total amount of money being stolen would be going through the roof, too. But that's not what's happening at all, and it creates this really interesting paradox. Take a look at this. It's the complete opposite of what you'd expect. Even with that huge spike in victims, the total dollar amount stolen from individuals has actually been cut in half. It dropped from $1.5 billion last year to just over $700 million this year. So, wait a minute. How does that work? Way more attacks, but less money stolen? What's going on here? And here's the answer. It all comes down to another shift in strategy. The attackers have changed their game. Instead of spending all their time hunting for whales, those big accounts they can drain in one shot, they're going for a death by 1,000 cuts approach. They're targeting way more people, but only stealing smaller, almost unnoticeable amounts from each one. So when you step back and look at the big picture, you see crypto crime evolving on two fronts at the exact same time. On one hand, it's getting bigger and more professional, with these state-sponsored groups pulling off billion-dollar jobs. And on the other hand, it's getting broader, spreading out like a net to catch thousands of everyday users. Which really leaves us with one final and pretty heavy question to think about. As this threat grows in every single direction, whose job is it really to protect our digital wealth?